Welcome to Dublin. It's great to see so many people here, so many startups represented in the audience. I'm Hozel. I manage the technical infrastructure and cloud platform team at Google, and I'll tell you a little bit about our history and where we're going. So it wasn't too long ago that we were a startup ourselves. You actually see me on that picture on the left. If you look closely, you'll see I'm on crutches because I was under the mistaken impression that I should participate in the weekly roller hockey game. And back then, we really had a small team with a big idea. And one of the things that we quickly realized is that instead of just spending time on our idea, we had to spend a lot of time on building infrastructure, because what we wanted to do needed infrastructure, and the infrastructure we needed wasn't there. And so we started to spend a lot of effort, and that was a large part of my job. What you see here is one of our first server racks that we built ourselves in 1999. It's now on display at the Computer History Museum, and actually at the new London Science Museum. They have one of them as well. The only thing I can say in defense of the design is that it had to be done in 3 weeks, and then we needed to place the order, and 3 weeks later we needed those racks to actually be in position. But we learned a lot, and we spent a ton of time on that, and we really went through sort of all of the things that can go wrong. I think we found most of them. So I've seen actually our employees having to flee a building, a data center building, a rented one, of course, not our own facility, because the temperature was reaching 50 degrees Celsius and the fire suppression system went off. We had substations taken down, not just by birds, but snakes and squirrels, always squirrels. We had more fiber cuts than you can shake a stick at. So we went through a lot of trials and tribulations, but also we really spent a lot of time building that infrastructure. And so if you look at the history, for over 10 years, we've developed and published many of the ideas that we came to that makes infrastructure easier. Starting with GFS, the Google file system, a cluster-wide file system, MapReduce, that of course everyone knows today, Bigtable, the first NoSQL system, and so on, and so on, and so on. And then of course our public-facing products, starting with App Engine in about 7 years ago, 6 years ago. Now, we spent that time and that effort, and literally thousands of person-years of effort going into the hardware and the software infrastructure, because we were really forced to rethink all of these because our problem didn't fit sort of the general mold. And what's exciting is that, and what brings us personal satisfaction is that not just that this infrastructure is cool and great and leading, etc., but the services that we enable that are based on it. So if you think about the Google services that you hopefully all are using, each of these has different kinds of requirements. Each of these is a large computational problem, and all of them run on the infrastructure that we provide. And so even though we're internally the engine behind the search engine, so we don't make a product ourselves, we're very proud about really enabling the rest of Google to build products on top of that. Now, I'm here today to talk about the Google Cloud Platform. So with the Cloud Platform, we're externalizing all of the infrastructure that we built for everyone to use, so that you can benefit from all of our infrastructure experience, and that you can focus on the things that you actually want to focus on, your product, rather than the machinery and the services behind it. So let's just have a very brief look at what this is. It's a complete platform of services from very low level to very high level. Starting with compute, you have a whole range from low-level VMs, where you can change anything and you get raw VM, to managed VMs, that we actually can spin up and turn down for you, to App Engine, which completely gives you a fully managed platform that scales both your front ends and your back ends without you doing anything. So on App Engine, the only administrative action that you need to perform for your application is that you need to renew your credit card every 2 years, right? You spend 0 time on operations. On data storage, we have sort of the usual offerings: Blob Store, Block Store, Managed SQL, of course. Big data, one of our big focuses, and one of the things that really internally we've used a lot. We have some very interesting systems. BigQuery lets you interactively with SQL queries run over petabytes of data, literally. So it's pretty much arbitrarily scalable. It gives you real-time response in 2 or 3 seconds. Or Cloud Data Flow, which is what has internally made MapReduce really an obsolete system to us, because it's much more natural to express data pipelines in Dataflow than in MapReduce. And then, of course, we have lots of services, including, as announced yesterday, Firebase for mobile developers, that just make development easier for you, from monitoring to mobile to prediction to networking services, or the many other services that Google provides, like translation. Now, it's not just about these products. Ultimately, it's also about price performance. How much does it cost to run this workload on our infrastructure versus your own infrastructure? And one of the things that we believe very strongly in is that the cost of cloud infrastructure should follow Moore's law. You probably have all heard about Moore's law, something like computers get double their speed every 18 months or something like that, and with that the price goes down. We believe that really needs to be reflected in the cloud as well. And so earlier this year in March, we really reset expectations of what price performance should look like, and we're very happy that we have moved the industry to a model that will follow Moore's law. And just recently, earlier, like a few weeks ago, we lowered prices of compute again, and yesterday of storage and networking. So you're really going to see us follow this curve. Now, no wonder lots of people are running on our cloud platform. To actually over 300,000 developers are developing on our platform. Some of the European customers would be, let's say, Mcache, Philips, Wix, Framestore. Give you just a little bit more flavor. Wix builds web services. They moved from their existing infrastructure, most of their application, to our infrastructure, upload something like 11 million files a day, 600 terabytes of storage. And they actually, sometimes your customers do something so innovative that you really partner with them. And so today we're actually announcing later at 2:30 in our booth that Wix is making their media services available to everyone as part of the Google Cloud Platform. Or Framestore, I think they were here yesterday. You may not have heard of them, but you have seen them. If you watched a movie like Avatar or Gravity, they do special effects. And on a busy week, they use 15,000 cores. And they saved over 200 million euros in hardware costs by being on our platform. Now, to go back to entrepreneurships, right? We really care about entrepreneurs because that's where we came from, right? 2 guys with a big idea. And so it's great to see so many of you here. And I want to just point you to the many services that we have for entrepreneurs, right? Including our startup spaces in London, Tel Aviv, soon Warsaw, and Madrid, I believe. But more importantly, if I look at the list of these companies, I really hope that, and these are companies in attendance here, that many of you will turn into big, successful companies. And that's why I'm very happy to make a very special announcement and provide something very special for all the exhibiting companies here today. Because we, from the Google Cloud Platform, we're making a total of $20 million of startup credits for the Google Cloud Platform available to every participating company, every exhibiting startup at this summit. So $10,000 for every startup. Thank you. So the fine print is here, and you need to come to our booth to actually cash it in. But I hope this really makes it easier for you to see that and to try out what we think is the best platform in the world. Now let me end on a rant, actually, because I think that you all have it too easy. Because back when we were startups, right, we had to build infrastructure with our bare hands, right? After walking through the snow, no shoes, uphill both ways, and spending our blood, sweat, and tears on all of this. And you just sit there, with your latte, spinning up 1,000 VMs, and you don't realize how hard that is. So what's with that, right? Well, what it is that this is actually exactly how it should be. Right? This is exactly what we want to accomplish with our platform. You should focus on innovation, not infrastructure. And with our platform, you can. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Urs. If you want to take a seat. So to continue the conversation further, please welcome Murad Ahmed of the Financial Times.
So this crowd probably likes you right now. You're giving £10,000 to everybody. But what are other lessons that you could pass on to startups? You were Google's 8th employee. You were there at the coalface, like you said. So what are some of the mistakes that you made that startups in this crowd here could learn from and make sure that they don't waste this £10,000 you're giving them?
Yeah, I think the number one mistake actually you can make, that I'm very happy that we didn't make it at Google, and at times it was hard, was not focusing enough on hiring. I think the number one reason why startup fails is because they hire too fast or they have too low a bar, and in the long term there's almost nothing you can do to overcome that. So my first advice really would be that focus on hiring great people, because getting a great infrastructure is easy. Just come to us.
So you keep saying come to us. Isn't there a danger that some of the startups here, they've got ambitions of being grown-ups and then they're hooked into your infrastructure? Is there any risk that you might end up stifling them? Surely they should go ahead and build their own infrastructure.
No, so I think there's really two parts. One is we're a strong believer and strong supporter of open source. And so you can, we're building a cloud where you're going to have a great open source experience. And that's something we're really committed to. And you can see that with our activities, for example, in the container space. Like we open source Kubernetes, a container management systems. And we're really trying to encourage a full open source stack so that you're not going to be locked in, just unnecessarily. The second one is that this is really a business that we care about, not just because it's important, because it's enabling, all of you to move faster, but because it is a business that one day will be bigger than ads itself. Right? It's very clear that sort of server-side cycles are moving to the cloud, client-side cycles are moving to mobile. And it's just a matter of how fast it is, but this business will be bigger than ads, and so it's something that matters to us as a company as well.
So you were talking earlier about the race to the bottom in terms of cloud prices, and Moore's Law being a big driver on this. What's the impact on startups as a result of this? Is it the cost of entry is just getting close to nil at the moment?
I think one of the great things about Moore's Law is that it drives down the cost without you as a user doing anything about it, right? Things get faster, things get cheaper, which means that you can afford to do more for your service, even if you have relatively light monetization through ads, for example. And that's actually been one of the drivers between our infrastructure efforts and why we really focused on cost from the very beginning. that's because most of our service is from Gmail to YouTube. They have a fair amount of compute or storage, but they have a very, very light monetization per user. And so your cost per user have to be very low to make that equation work out. And I think that's that's a situation that most startups are in. And the nice thing is that like the entire industry can really benefit from that trend line.
But is there anything that these startups should be building at home themselves? You seem to be giving them everything here.
So
what would you say that they should do themselves?
Sorry, what they should do or shouldn't do?
What they should do. What should they build themselves?
I think today there's not really strong reasons to build something yourself. I think the common wisdom a year ago was that clouds are great to get started, but once you reach a certain size, you want to do it yourself because it's cheaper and higher performance. We definitely want to make that meme disappear. It was true last year because pricing wasn't where it should be, right? The margin was artificially high, and that's not going to be true in the future anymore. But I think the nice thing is if you build your system on open source, you can always move out, right? If you're unhappy. So not really caught.
We're here in Europe, so I have to ask some European questions. You will have seen that Amazon Web Services, one of your rivals in this space, have decided to build data centers in Germany. And this seems to be partly to do with concerns about where data is housed. The European Commission would like data to be housed here. I'm sure a lot of the startups here that are trying to comply with these laws will probably want that as well. What's Google going to do about this issue? Are you also going to allow services that allow people to house their data in Europe?
Sure. So we've been in Europe actually for a long time. Our first European data center was here in Dublin actually, almost 10 years ago. Today we have 3 live sites, Dublin, Belgium, and Finland. And we just announced a few weeks ago that we're starting a new site in the Netherlands, which will be our 4th in Europe, and will be live in 2016. So we've built actually a global presence because we need to be close to our users, and I think that's a natural thing, ignoring legislative kind of concerns. And so as a user of the cloud, you really have a choice of where to locate. You have a choice of whether to provide a local service or a global service, and I think that's a natural evolution of the cloud.
But I mean, you're in Silicon Valley. Do you understand this kind of European concern to have information stored in servers here? The cloud was supposed to be this global thing that transcends borders. We seem to be moving back into a world of being fixated on where things are actually placed.
Yes, so I think, so I grew up in Switzerland, and so, Switzerland isn't really part of Europe, but if you're in the US, it is. So in the US, I'm a European. So I think to some extent, the focus on location is it's not really a root cause, right? It's sort of a symptom, if you want. The root problem is that our legal system today, and it's true in pretty much any country, doesn't really know about the internet and the fact that a service can be in more than one places even at the same time. And so it focuses very much on physical location rather than sort of conceptual content. So I'll tell you an example of the US because I'm familiar with it. In the US, if you send me a letter, a physical letter, and I have it in my possession, or if you send me an email and I run an email server in my basement, or if you send me an email and I receive it on Gmail, a hosted service. These are 3 legally different situations in terms of what the rules are for a third party, be it the government or a private person in a lawsuit, to get at the content of that communication between you and me. And that really makes no sense, right? This is a communication between you and me. It should have a certain set of privacy rules, and it should not depend on the physical implementation of that communication. But today's laws really don't kind of understand it, and I think we have to really evolve, internationally to a system of consistent laws that actually respect the content and really make privacy about the content rather than the mechanism, whether it's stored this way or that way.
Okay. One last question on what you're doing in the kind of green sphere. There was a lot of hype around a story a couple of years ago about data centers contributing to climate change and so on, and companies like yourself have made steps to adapt to this. What are those, and what are you continuing to do?
Yes, that's something I'm actually very passionate about. Personally, we've been carbon neutral as a company since 2007, and we spent a lot of effort making our data centers very efficient, so that today they use about half the energy of sort of the typical industry average data center. And that's actually, I think, a huge opportunity. If you run your own server room, I can guarantee that you're going to use more energy per computation than we do, just because you don't have the benefit of scale, and also really the efforts that we put in to efficiency. And so I think the move to cloud is really a big opportunity to take energy out of the overall sort of IT ecosystem. You're concentrated in larger data centers, but these are much more efficiently utilized and also efficiently run than the sum of all the parts where the applications came from. So that's something I'm very excited about.
All right, Oz. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you.